All right. Now we are recording this. Once again, I'm James Leichter from Aptora, and we are going to be talking about Total Office Manager Aptora software, covering many of the things that we've noticed people are not aware of in our software. The first thing that I wanted to do before we go any further is just briefly talk about the support and training options that are available. We have a large set of articles on our website. If you were to go to support.aptora.com, you'll discover there are a lot of help topics. There's lots of tips, things like that. Under resources, you can see release notes for our software. We try to be very specific in our release notes as much as we can without, writing a book, because it can get pretty ridiculous in detail. But we try to do a good job of explaining the new features. We put in your ticket number, so if you should be able to see your ticket number in here. And we try to do a good job of explaining the bug fix that we did rather than just say bug fixes like a lot of companies do. We try to do a good job of putting those in there. Some of you get yellow screens, and we work on those. When you submit those yellow screens to us, we work on those even if you don't have a ticket in, and we try to explain the yellow screen. That way you might say, oh, I've seen that before. They fixed that one, thankfully. So be sure to check out our website, and hope you'll enjoy some of those resources that are available to you. We also have a very extensive set of videos on YouTube, over 100 videos on YouTube. Feel free to go there, sign up, hit the alert button. That way you'll be alerted to new videos that we put out all the time. We offer live training, as many of you have taken the opportunity to participate in. You can train with Erica and others, and that can be very specific consulting type training rather than just generic training. You can have very specific consulting training that can be live over the internet. We can also come to you, not as easy as it used to be with COVID, but we can always come to you. And we also have a feature request system that many of you participate in. I want to be sure to remind you about that. All right, let's talk about speed. One thing that I have noticed is that some of our users are suffering from slow software, and it shouldn't be that way. There's a couple of tests you can run to see if your software is working about as fast as it should, because it can only get so fast. Being desktop software with lots of controls on each form, it can only get so quick. But let me show you a few things you can test. If you open up a new customer, you should be able to count in your head no more than about 6 or 7 seconds to open that form. That's about as fast as it can open, because it has so many things on that form that have to preload. But it should be no more than about 6 seconds. If you were to open a blank, empty invoice, it should take no more than about 7 seconds. And again, not much faster, because it's loading your customer list, it's loading your department list, your sales tax list, it's preloading your items. So it's loading a lot of things. You can see here there's thousands of items that preloaded in that 7 seconds. But about 7 seconds should be right. If you open up, say, a work order list, depending on how many work orders you have, it should be in the neighborhood of about 7 seconds. So I just opened 88,247 work orders. You can see I have all these columns, all those columns, and that was about 7 seconds or so. Another test might be to run an income statement. So here I have an income statement. I've got 2 years, and this database has quite a bit of data. I've got 2 years. I'll hit preview. This should be about 4 seconds. So it was even less. And you can see I've got a lot of revenue here. I've got 21 million in revenue, 15 million in revenue. I've got quite a bit of data in here. And that was not even 2 seconds. If yours is slower than that, there could be an issue. If we departmentalize it, it's going to be slower. So let's go ahead and do 2 years, do department and dollar comparison. That'd be fine. So this should take about 12 seconds because it's going to generate an income statement for each department for 2 years. It needs 2 passes at it, by the way. So there's pass number 1, here comes pass number 2, and there's 75 pages. So we produce 75 pages in 10 seconds or less. That's pretty good. There's a lot of data there. All right, so a couple things to look for if you're not hosted. If you're not hosted, because if you're hosted, we take care of what I'm about to show you. Under File, go to Company File Information and go down to the, well, you can start at the File Property tab here. And one thing that you want to look for is the date of your very first transaction. Now, what I'm about to show you, we take care of if you're hosted, but not this part. First transaction, 1911. So somebody accidentally entered that date, 1911. Maybe they meant to put in 2019 or something like that. If you have a transaction that goes back to 1911, that can slow things down because it has to go back and look for that old record, and it's going to look in between 1911 and the current date. The last transaction, it could say 2021 or it could say 2091. I've seen that many times. Maybe not 91, but you get the idea. So check your first and last transaction to make sure that they are reasonable. And if you want to find that transaction, that old transaction, then you should be able to go to your general ledger, open up the general journal and just sort or scroll down to the bottom. You could, if you have an idea of what it is, you could open up a list and 1911, right click, and I can fix it. Let's do edit check. Could have double clicked on it, couldn't I? And then we'll go to the date and fix it. So that should have been 2021, for example. 20, I'll make it 20. Save and close. All right, so that's fixed. The other thing that you want to do is go back to company file information, go to your database stat. Look to see if your database has ever been backed up. Last database backup, never. That's not a good sign. You should not see that. You should be backing up your database. Now, if you back up the computer that has your database on it, that's not enough. SQL Server has to back up the database, and then your computer has to back up that file. It's important that your SQL Server be set up to back up your database. So last database backup, that should have been last night or this morning. You do not want to see never. I have never here just to show you an example, but you don't want to see that. Also, you want to be sure that your database compatibility level is matching your server compatibility level. Those two need to match. And you need to be using SQL Server 2014 Release 2 or higher. If you want to know more about these issues, don't call tech support because that's more of an IT issue. You can have somebody knowledgeable follow this link here, learn about database maintenance. And we have a very good article that gives you a lot of detail about what this all means. All right, so that should help somebody knowledgeable set things up pretty quickly. All right, so just to recap what I was getting at, do a quick speed test. Form should open in 6 or 7 seconds. Your income statement, a few seconds. Departmentalized, maybe 10 seconds. Most lists should open up in about 7 seconds or so. If they don't, you want to be sure to go to company file and check the maintenance, the database stats, and read that article, and that's where I would start. A couple things I want to show you, though, that might also help with speed are some of the features related to the software working quickly. If you have a lot of records, like you have a work order list, invoice list, customer list that has tens of thousands of records, then you may not want to open that list completely populated. Like, for example, you might not want to open up your customer list and wait for it to load all of these records. Ooh, I messed up my column width earlier. You might want this to open up empty, or maybe open up with, say, the first 100 records. By using the list speed optimization feature, you can make the software operate much faster. And again, there's a great article on that. Click here for details. It'll take you to the support site, and you can read an article about how to speed up the software. All right. So that should help a lot. Also, on these lists, you have certain columns that will slow down searching and loading of these lists. Those columns are marked with an asterisk. Like, for example, sales rep has an asterisk next to it. Service agreement, yes or no, an asterisk. Do they have a balance due? How much money have they spent? Things like that. Those will slow the list down. If you need that information, that's fine. You can leave it on there. But if you don't need it, you might as well uncheck anything with an asterisk next to it. So again, you'd go to, say, your invoice list. And if you want to make searching faster, loading, sorting, etc., faster, then go to Form Preferences, Show Columns, and look for anything with an asterisk and decide, do I need that? Third-party bill, don't even know what that is. Uncheck it. Scroll down, anything with an asterisk. Ask yourself, out of stock serialized items? I don't care about that. Uncheck it. So just uncheck anything that you don't need. If it doesn't have an asterisk next to it, you won't see a giant speed increase, but it should make managing the list a whole lot easier. I'll go select all, click OK, because mine's going pretty quick. Now, if you want a fast way to do it, you might have noticed this form has a button on it called Hide Columns that significantly slow list performance. If you click that, it will automatically go through every user and uncheck those boxes. Now, that might make somebody mad. They open up a list, like they open up their work order list, and a column's missing. And so they're mad. They're wondering who did that. They should notice the list is a whole lot faster, but they can always go back to Show Columns and check that box. Technician callback, yeah, I want that. Who unchecked that? Assets, I want that. So they can always add those back, but chances are they won't. Chances are they don't even know they had that check. They don't even care about it. So add those back if needed on a user by user basis, but most people won't care. As you make the program faster for one person, it gets faster for everybody because there's less traffic going through the server. So you'll notice that things improve for everybody. All right, I could talk more about speed, but that help topic is there for you if you want to have a look at it, and hopefully you can make things a little faster. Database maintenance, backing up your database maintenance, again, it has to be set up by you on your server in SQL Server. If you are a cloud client of ours, we take care of all that maintenance. We back it up, we do maintenance, we do all that for you. You don't have to worry about it. Let's go to company and go down to DBA. I want to make sure everybody's aware that you have the ability to set up doing business as. You can create multiple locations for your company. You can have different license numbers if you need to, different logos, etc. When you go to print invoices and other things, you can pick which DBA to use, and you can set those as your default, and you can do that in mobile. So you do have the ability to handle multiple locations, multiple DBAs, doing business as. Otherwise, under the company information form, you can just type in your single DBA. If your company is called Pro American Services Corporation, but you just call yourself Pro American Services, you type it there, and that's good enough. But if you do have multiple locations, you might want to use the DBA feature. Might find that helpful. Let's open up preferences and cover some of the preferences that I think are important. One preference we recently added is, see if I can find it. There it is. First try. There's so many preferences, I'm beginning to lose track of where they are. We added the ability to add a contact log when printing or emailing work orders, estimates, sales, invoices, and purchase orders. This was a feature request. One of you or one of our users went to the feature request system. They asked for it. People voted on it. It got our attention. We said, that's a good idea. And we added it. Now, when you go to print a work order, it'll put in a contact log. You have the ability to select a default topic, such as job information, purchase, return. So you decide what the topic is going to be, and then it'll enter that contact log for you. So let's take a look at that real quick. I don't want to get into training so much, but I thought we should have a look. So let's say you're in an invoice. You go to menu, go to print, and hitting email or preview will do it. You don't actually have to print it. But let's say you hit print preview there. Okay, so we got that previewed. Now there should be a contact log entry. So let's right click, go to customer job, contact log. And you should see a contact log added for that particular invoice. So that's how it works. Enters a contact log, puts in picks that subject, puts in a topic, puts in a note. You can always embellish that note later if you want to, but hopefully some of you will find that feature handy. I know at Aptora we find it handy because we have as much trouble as anyone getting our people to add contact logs. If you look at cutoff date here under company preferences, you might find this handy. You may not want to allow people to modify accounting records before a certain date. Like, for example, 2019 might be closed. 18 certainly is. If you activate this feature, people will not be able to update accounting information on this date or earlier. Or later, I should say older. I'll use the word older. So set that cutoff date. Now, if they know the secret password, I'll talk more about that in a minute. If they know the secret password, well, they can still do that. And the whole thing is written to the audit trail. So keep in mind, every time they do any of that, it's written to the audit trail. It'll put a special note in that you backdated, post-dated, whatever. You'll know the user, the computer, the record. So it's all transparent. By the way, this audit trail, you can double click on some of these transactions to open them. Not all of them can be opened because of the nature of the audit trail entry. But I wanted to let everybody know you can double click on the audit trail. But that might help you resolve some of those numbers accidentally changing. Remember the 1911 transaction that got fat fingered? We might be able to prevent that. Warn if the transactions are a certain number of days in the past or the future. What it'll do is it'll allow you to type in the wrong date, but it'll tell you that that date is probably not right based on the preference. So that might help. So that's how you lock a period. That's how you do date checking. We talked about the fast list feature. There's some other speed enhancing preferences in here. There's a lot of them actually. But one of them that I want to draw your attention to is, let's go here. You have the ability to load the customer job list empty. Now, you may not need to worry about this if you're using the fast list feature, but you may say, look, when I open the customer job list, I don't need anything to be in it because chances are what I'm looking for isn't going to be in there anyway. I'm going to have to search for it. If you open it empty, it's faster because it doesn't load those customers and jobs. If you want to, you could also say, when I go to enter a new payment, I only want to load customers that have a balance. Now, some of you have told me that doesn't always apply to you, but if it did, it would make the form faster because rather than load 50,000 customers, it will only load the ones that have a balance and it's faster. The customer history form has a balance field and it takes a while to calculate that. If you don't need that balance field, or maybe you don't want the user to see it, you can not show it. I'll go ahead and show mine. Now, this load empty option is available in a lot of places. And here's how it can be really handy. Let's go to the work order list. And let's say that we want to edit this work order. 3, 4, 5. It took about 5 or 6 seconds. Part of the reason why it took 6 seconds to open is because it loaded, or it could have, depending on how you had your setup, it could have loaded the entire customer list. Notice that I've told the software, don't load the customer list. I'm only editing it, and I probably don't want to change the customer. Now, maybe you do, and this wouldn't apply to you. But if you say to yourself, gosh, I rarely change the customer when I go edit a work order, invoice, etc. I rarely ever change the vendor on a check. Then this feature's for you because we won't load those. Now, if you still need them, like it's rare, but you occasionally do, we have a read load list feature and it loads it. And you notice it was pretty quick. But why load all that if you don't need to? So if you look around, you'll find preferences that allow you to not load certain lists on edit. Just check them out. Just go through preferences to find those because they're in different places. Hopefully that'll make things faster for you as well. Service agreements. Hopefully you're taking advantage of our service agreement feature. Maybe you know about this, but I want to make sure that everybody is aware of the escrow accounting feature. When you turn it on, what'll happen is you will not recognize income when you sell a service agreement. You only recognize income when you do the work, or you recognize income over the life of the service agreement. Accounting people call that a matching revenue principle, where you match the revenue with the COGS, cost of goods sold, with activity. There's no reason to sell a service agreement today, December 1st, and do little to no work on it, and then pay taxes on it next year. You're going to pay taxes on the entire sale. That feature will save you tax money. It should. It should make your income statement and other reports more accurate because of that matching principle. So be sure to look into the escrow accounting feature. Again, there's a good help topic on that if you're not familiar with it. I think I'll show you one more preference. Come here to items, company, preferences. You can have a lot of default values to save you time when you're dealing with items here. Also, there are plenty of item features that you may or may not be using. For example, the item alias feature that allows you to have an item number per vendor, and you can use that vendor specific pricing. You can have the unit of measure feature, like you buy a roll of wire, but you sell it by the foot. You buy a 10-foot stick of pipe, but you sell it by the foot. So there's certain features here you might want to check out. The item assembly feature that allows you to assemble an item, manufacture an item. And what that does is that takes multiple items out of inventory and puts the manufactured item in inventory. That can be very useful for duct work, especially large commercial work. You might want to have inventory by employee. You might want to have warehouse assignment by user. So you might want to control what user can grab what warehouse. Just check that box. So be sure to check out those preferences. Under company, I'll just show you one of them. Under company, you could turn on the warehouse assignment by user. And this would allow you to pick a user and decide what warehouses they can manage. So we have James, we have Isabel. Here's Isabel. And we will say, well, we'll start with nothing. These are the available warehouses. I only want Isabel to deal with her truck and the main warehouse, and that's it. That's all. A lot of people aren't aware of that feature. So be sure to check out those preferences and see if any of them apply to you. Let's talk a little bit about security. Come up here to company, user list security, and open up Ashley. Now you won't see this yet, but just in case you noticed it, there is a enter time clock pin. We have a time clock product coming out. So we have a new app for time clocks. It would replace your time clock on the wall. That is in beta right now. So we're evaluating it, and it should come out of beta pretty quickly. There's not a lot to test on it, not a lot to comment on. More about that later. There's a help topic already out there for the beta people. So if you want to go to support, you can type in time clock, and you should find the help topic if you're interested in that. But let's get to next. Wanted to show you the approval process. If you'd like to, you can give employees permission to approve sales, invoices, estimates, credit, purchase orders. So that way, before somebody can print or email an estimate, another person would have to approve it. You can turn that feature on in preferences. Let's go look at that. Hopefully I can find it quickly. Approval. POS. Gosh, I forgot where it was. I'll remember in a minute. Erica probably knows. She can chime in. Sorry?
It's under security.
Oh, so yeah, doesn't that make sense? I should have gone there. There we go. So here's how you can turn that feature on, and then you can set a limit. So like, for example, require approval to print an email if over $1,000. So what I'm doing is I'm saying that if a sale or invoice is over 1,000, this user is going to have to get approval. And I may do the same thing for credits, purchase orders. And again, I can set a number. So anything under 1,000, we don't care. She can do it. As long as I'm in here, I should show you this. Cannot edit other users' contact log entries. A lot of people aren't aware of that. That's been a feature request many times, but it's been in there a long time. So that just means that we are not going to allow people to edit other people's contact log entries. I would recommend that you check that box. Don't let them edit. Don't let one person edit another person's contact log entry, typically. All right, so back to security. This is where you would grant the person the ability to approve other people's forms and their own forms, which might seem weird, but they can approve their own forms. They still have to click approval because we want them to think about the process, like proofreading. Now we have a relatively new feature. If you update, you'll see a feature that's been asked for many times. This was added to our feature request system, and we said, yes, we'll do it. And we finally got it done. It's the administrator bypass authorization. In the past, when the software wanted a admin password for something like credit hold or editing an old transaction, etc., you put in the admin password. But it was pointed out to us that, well, that's not a good idea because sometimes the admin's not available, and we don't want them to reveal the admin password because people might look and notice what they typed in. So we added a new feature that allows you to have a bypass. If you check that box, it'll no longer use the admin password. And then you type in a unique password. Everybody has to have their own. And that's what pops up when you want to take somebody off credit hold or do something for somebody on credit hold or modify a transaction when it's been forbidden. That's the administrator bypass authorization. That's fairly new. And we'll click finish. All right, customers. Let's go to our customer list here. A lot of people aren't aware of the filter as you type. or find as you type. When you open this list, you can start typing in a name, last name, phone number, etc., and it'll just automatically go to it. A lot of people aren't aware of that. I did do the show columns, so now you know. Under quick filter, a lot of people aren't aware of the phone all and email all. Those are my favorite search methods, by the way. So it searches every phone number field in the customer, every field. That's really handy. By the way, there is a help topic on searching if you want to get tips on how to search. Let's see here. Let me find that as long as I don't take too much of your time. Database configuration. Let's go back to the home page. Just want to show you, we have a lot of this, so it's not so much that I care to show you the search feature, but there's so many pages on here that people aren't aware of. If you just want tips on how to search, you can type in search. I didn't hit enter. Type in search. Type search in the search box. Search tips for lists. So here are a bunch of search tips that a lot of people aren't aware of. For example, you could search with a percent, a letter, a percent, and it'll return anything that contains the letter that you put in there, regardless of capitalization. There's all kinds of tips like that. So please be aware of that. There's lots of ways to search right there. Now, if I open up a customer, just to show you, warning over there, credit limit. Oh yeah, you can turn all those off. Those are all preferences. So here I am in a customer form. A lot of people aren't aware of when they enter a job, there's a lot of opportunity to put in job information. If this were a job, like you're replacing a heat pump system, then you could put in a lot of this information here for that job. Also, under tax info, you have the ability to handle taxes by location. Many of you don't have to worry about this right now, but a lot of states are going to this. There's different taxes depending on where your truck is. And you have the ability with Total Office Manager, this is pretty unique. You have the ability to allocate taxes based on the location of that job. There's also a feature related to that with work orders that I might get to later, but I just want to make sure you're aware of that. Now, all of you have to be aware, I'm sure, of history. History's everywhere. You don't have to open a record. Typically, you right-click on a record to get to history, and you should see just about everything there is to see when it comes to history. Now, there is a preference to show notes. This is the part I wanted to show you. You might be aware of history, but did you know that there's a column here or a window that'll show you the notes from an invoice? When you highlight an invoice, it shows those notes. That's a preference to turn on. So what am I talking about? Let's go to the invoice, open that invoice up, go to menu, go to details. I said notes, but same thing. And I'm just going to put random stuff in here. Click OK, save and close. All right. So it's not there. Notice I clicked. It's not there. Well, I have to refresh because it preloaded all that information. That's why it took so long, by the way. Some of these forms take a while to open because they're loading a lot of info. So now when I click it, I can see the notes. If you're not seeing this in work orders, invoices, etc., then be sure to turn that feature on. You do have the ability to hide some of these columns if you don't want to see payments, general ledger activity, adjusting journal entries, POs, whatever. If you don't want to see this stuff, then you do have preferences to hide these columns. Maybe you don't do AIA payment applications. You don't even want to see that column. Get rid of it. So in preferences, you can get rid of that as well. And most of these have some kind of right-click opportunity. Now, when I look at equipment here, don't forget that oftentimes certain records have history of their own. So let's say we want to search by last name, LEI, do part of my name. There I am. I don't have to open me. I'll just go to history, go to equipment, find what you're looking for. And let's see what has some good history. This one. Open up a piece of equipment. Just remember to check for history wherever you are. I'll go to menu, I'll go to history. This is the history of the equipment. And you'll notice the name of the customer is here. It's always me, but it doesn't have to be. The software will show you all the different people that have owned this piece of equipment. That's very important. This is the history of this serial number. And the current owner is James Leichter. It could have been owned by Betty Smith and Fred Johnson, and you'd see those different names here. Most software doesn't do that. And you'll also see the part number of the item you installed and the warranty status. If you see blanks, then it's something that you don't have a warranty on. You didn't offer a warranty. But here you can see the warranty status of every item that you installed in this piece of equipment. And of course, you can double click to open those if you want to. So history has history. The watch list. Add this equipment to the watch list. When you hover over it, it gives you a tip on what it means. But this means that there's something about this piece of equipment that I'm concerned about. Who do I talk to about this, by the way? Added to watch list by Ashley Adams on 6/12. So what I could do is right click. I could go to the customer's contact log. I could come down to the bottom and I could filter out these topics or filter out by the user, Ashley. And maybe there's too much here. So I'll type in watch or watch list. And if she had entered a reason why she put it on the watch list, I would see it here. If you still don't see what you're looking for, you can always do the include entire family or even include work order notes. Remember, the work order has its own contact log. So you could include the work order contact log notes as well. And that way you'd be able to search all of that. So let's have a look at that. Let's go to history. Let's go to work orders. Let's open a work order. Menu. And the work order has their own set of contact logs. So let me reposition this here. So if you want to add contact log notes for a work order, and sometimes you have to scroll down a little, work order contact log. Now remember, I said everything's got history. Work orders have history. So this is not the history of the customer on the work order. It's the work order history. I don't know if it's got any. Let's have a look. So this work order has been used in one invoice, no timesheet entries, no POs, no accounts payable, no adjusting journal entries, rather. But you'd be able to see open POs like, oh yeah, I see we're waiting on parts for this work order. And then you might call the vendor, double click on the work order, double click on the purchase order, call the vendor, maybe put in a note in the contact log note for the work order. All right, so hopefully some of these things are new to you. By the way, on work orders, since I was in there, I shouldn't have closed it so quick. I want to tell you a couple things here. Under general, repeating work order. If you would like the work order to repeat itself, like a memorized transaction, it'll repeat itself on a schedule of your choice. That option is there. That's not real new, but a couple years, 3 years, something like that. And then there's multi-day work order. That's a few years old too, but we notice a lot of people aren't using it. The multi-day just means that this work order will span 2 or more days. And you can put multiple people on a series of work orders. So that's what those two features are for. And I think most of you know about the callback feature, but I noticed that a lot of people don't use the callback feature for whatever reason. It's very helpful. And even if the callback is ran by the same person, you should still go pick them because the software keeps track of callbacks. And that's important. Callbacks, by the way, best practice is always create an invoice, even if it's no charge. Create an invoice for all activity. If it's a visit as part of a service agreement and it's a 0 invoice, create it anyway. If it's a callback and you didn't charge them, create it anyway. Warranty, create it anyway. Best practice is you should always have an invoice. Notes, additional info, user-defined fields. No invoice or sales required. You're just telling the software, look, I don't need to create an invoice for this. And what that does is that allows you to see a column, invoice required, yes or no. It can become one of your columns. So there's an invoice, yes or no. But right next to it, you could have invoice required, yes or no. And then that way it can become part of your filters. I have filters here, for example, that say work orders today not invoiced. So I could add another parameter to that that says, well, they need to have invoicing as a requirement. Get rid of all that. But I'm not a big fan of no invoice. Best practice means an invoice for everything. But of course, that's not a rule. You're not going to be arrested. It's just a good practice because it gives you more information. And again, edit filter. That's what got lost a second ago. I could add another parameter that says equal to, and then I could be sure to include the invoice was required. All right, let's talk about payroll real quick. I've noticed that a lot of people are not using the commission methods. Erica and I love this feature. It gives you the ability to do a lot of different types of sales commissions. I'll do new and just show them to you real quick. You have all these different methods, one of which is a real flexible method. The software has the ability to automatically calculate sales commissions for various things. So I would check into that. There's a great help topic on it. The help topic is really thorough. If you printed it, it's probably 6 pages long, and it explains every possible scenario that I could think of anyway, because I wrote the help topic myself. And I designed this feature myself based on all the things that clients told me, all the different ways they pay, and it is really flexible. The payroll system is underutilized, I think, by a lot of our users. If you go into my payroll items list, this is just the one I use for training and examples, things like that. I've got things set up here for mileage reimbursement. I've got child garnishments. I have a health savings account set up. I set up a tool reimbursement account. I have a union pension fund that I put in here to show people how that worked. I created a new earning item for flat rate compensation so I can pay people flat rate. I created a earning item where we pay you a little bit of money to provide your own tools. So this tool allowance bonus would mean that I pay you a certain amount of money. In this case, it's 30 cents an hour. It goes into an asset account, and I draw from that account to pay you back to buy tools. So that's a neat thing. There's a lot you can do with our payroll. Again, we just find that it's very underutilized, the whole payroll system. Let's go look at some employees. Let's go to Ashley. She's at the top of the list. Let's look at her history. In her history, this is no substitute for a report, but in her history, there's a lot of good information. Every sale she's been involved in, every work order, every callback, every check we've written her directly, time off requests, phone messages, commissions we've paid her, liability adjustments for payroll. We can see year-to-date callbacks. We can see invoices, revenue generated, etc. So there's a lot of good information on her. And I noticed that a lot of companies aren't paying attention to that history. Let's right click and go to employee payroll items. Here we have the ability to set up a default earning item, a default service item. So that way, when they create an invoice, we can have a default service item for that invoice. We have default earning item for travel. If you want to track her travel time separately or pay her differently for travel, default workers' comp code. Now, a lot of you are aware of the hire date and the release date, eligible for rehire. Someone put in a feature request saying that, hey, we have people that we hire and release all the time on, they're good people, but they just come and go. Family members, etc., seasonal workers. And if we change the hire date and change the release date, well, those dates are gone. And we want some kind of like mini audit trail. We don't want to lose that information. What we did, we already had an earnings history. So this would show you a history of all their earnings, all the changes to their earning items. We added an employment history. So what that does is that shows you the hire date, old value, new value, release date, old value, new value, etc. So that way you keep track of that. If you want to put in a memo, like we released them for good, they're no longer eligible or something like that, you can put in memos. The rest of this is read only. You can't change it. But that way it'll keep track of that information for you. And you don't have to put that in a contact log, nor would you have to put in a record of their raises, because if you give them a raise, then that difference will be in here. You'll be able to see a history of their raises. So that was added fairly recently. The fixed asset manager is another thing that people are not using to its full extent. If I open the fixed asset manager up, I should be able to see a list of all your assets, your company's assets, at least the important ones. And that may not necessarily be valuable assets, but they're important ones. You could have a valuable asset that's very inexpensive, but it might be expensive to lose track of it or forget to bring it. So you want to put in all your vehicles, your computers, your 8-foot brake, your Pittsburgh Seamer, your forklift, all those things, put those in here. And if you ever have to call for tech support, like for example, you call Dell or Samsung and you need tech support on a tablet, well, open that tablet and have it in front of you. And if it's a Dell computer, for example, they're going to want your site or service tag number. They're going to want the service tag number. So put that in there, have it ready for you. You can have the purchase date under menu. You could go to your document links and you should have a copy of the receipt that you could open. And if they tell you something, you put in notes. Like, for example, recently we called and they told us they would send us a new fan motor. So we put the note in there that they're sending us a new fan motor. The part was covered, but not the labor. Put that information in there. Put your warranty information in there. Put in pictures if you want. You can have a main image. You can have multiple images. To make data entry a little easier, there's a copy button. Maybe you're putting in 10 things and they're all pretty similar. You, of course, have the ability to assign these assets to your employees, even to a customer. You can assign them to a vehicle or all three. There's depreciation schedules here, additional info. Now, one thing that I want to bring your attention to is if you check the box called include in bills and checks, that way, when you go write a check, and let's do a check here for Philip 66. Do you want to recall the last one? Yeah, I'll make it easy on myself. So here I bought gas again, 53.11. Now this time it was 48 even. And I'll slide over here to the asset selector. And because that box is checked, that vehicle would be here. Now I'm keeping track of all the money I spend on my vehicles. Not only do I know how much the vehicle cost to buy it, but I know how much it costs to own it. Same way with marketing. If you put in all of your marketing, you have the ability to select that marketing type when you write a check or enter a credit card charge. That way, your chart of accounts is not filled up with all your marketing and all your vehicles. You don't want to fill your chart of accounts with all those details. You want to maintain an asset list, a marketing list, and others, and pick those during the AP process. And there's reports that show you how much all these things cost you. Speaking of that, let's go back to our asset list and open up this guy here. Go back to additional info. Notice that this has odometer usage on it. This is a fairly new feature where you can track the odometer or other meters. If you enter the odometer reading when you enter the timesheet in Tom, or you enter a timesheet in mobile, or you use GPS data automatically, like Verizon, it'll put it in for you. But what this does is this allows you to enter your odometer reading, or in the case of say a forklift, it could be hours operated, right? 100 hours, 200 hours. You'll see the date, the time that it was entered, who entered it right there. Now, in addition to that, if you go into the assets history, you'll be able to see all the history of this asset. But check it out. We have odometer readings right here. We have all the money that you spent to buy the vehicle. We have the money that you have spent to maintain the vehicle. We have year-to-date miles, total miles, etc. Now I can tell you this vehicle cost you 57 cents a mile to own. I could tell you the forklift costs you 50 cents an hour to operate, etc. Year-to-date revenue, what does that mean? You have the ability to actually lease your fixed assets to people. So like, for example, I'll open up a storage tank here. Additional info, available for lease or rental, check that box. Now, when you go to create an invoice, you could have an item that you use for leasing or renting things. I have that called lease. Scroll over here to your asset picker, lease rental. These are in here because the box is checked. Pipe 30 machine, storage tank. Now look, this could be zero. You're not actually collecting money. Maybe it's a set of fans and you're drying the basement out because you do wet basement resolution. But at least you're keeping track of it. It's on an invoice. You can get somebody to sign for it. They can sign for that asset. A lot of people aren't aware of that. In fact, most people aren't. If you are, you're probably pretty advanced. You're really using the software well. All right. So fixed asset manager, we could talk more about that, but I just want to be sure that you're using that in your AP functions when you enter credit card charges, etc. You could use it on your invoices, as I showed you. A lot of people I've noticed don't use the search form. If you click search or click edit and go to advanced search, this form opens up. One of my coworkers here always tells me to remind people about it because she loves it. She uses it all the time. She calls it the binoculars thing. She says, I use the binoculars thing and found it right up there, the binoculars thing. It searches out amounts and dates and memos and numbers and jobs or general. So let's say that you want to search a contact log and you only want to search the customer's contact log and you're looking for red tagged because you remember typing in something like red tagged or red tag and you want to find it. There it is 3 times. Oh, it was this guy. Click edit and it opens it. I had that opened already. So let's clear our filters. So now we would see red tagged in here. I had it open already. That's why. It didn't show it right away, but in here we have red tagged. Now, if I want to find it, of course, I can just do a quick search inside the contact log, but that'll help you find things that maybe you put in years ago and you can't find it. I use it a lot for things that I bought 7 years ago and can't remember what we called it. Look up serial numbers, things like that. There are quite a few other tools available under utilities to do various things. I won't cover all these, but this could be very handy if you go in here and you want to update retail pricing or update departments or things like that quickly. You can do that. So be sure to check that out sometime. You might find some things in there that are very useful. I'm going to go to Window, Close All if you're not aware of that. No, I don't want to save. Might ask me again. All right, so I closed everything pretty quickly. I wanted to go to the invoice list. When you go into a list, don't forget to right click. You never know what you'll find, like the ability to assign hours and find in the general journal and shortcuts and memorize and mark it as in progress. And you can do things without opening it, undo the approval. There's certain things you can do without opening them. So always right click on every list just to see what's there. Now I'm going to open the invoice, click menu. Just wanted to be sure that I showed you the approval process. This is how I would approve it or undo the approval because I have permission. I have a history of the invoice, not the customer, but a history of the invoice, like how much has been paid, were discounts taken, things like that. I have an analysis that's handy. You can use this on invoices, estimates, sales. That way you can get an idea of your gross profit. This is especially helpful on an estimate. Before you submit the estimate, you might want to run through the analysis just to see how it looks. Go back to menu. You can memorize it, see the signature from the field, user-defined fields. You can add your own fields to the invoice and use those in a custom invoice template. Assign hours, assign work orders. Hopefully you're familiar with this. You might have an invoice for 5 or 6 work orders. You can come in here and assign those invoices to, you can assign those work orders to this invoice. You might create an invoice from a work order, but you've got 5 other work orders that you want to associate with this. These could be installers, and this could have been a month-long job. You have the ability to associate all those work orders with this invoice, and you can add those work order items to the invoice for proper invoicing and proper job costing as well. Back to the menu. Assign commissions. We talked about that earlier briefly. The software has the ability to automatically put a sales commission on here. You can modify it, assuming you have permission. You can add people to it. So I could just randomly add somebody here and pick some kind of commission method. I can put in a memo if I need to explain myself to the payroll person. Job costing, yes or no? Do I want this to appear on job costing? If I pay a sales commission to someone, do I want that commission to show up on job costing as an expense, or do I consider that to be outside job costing? I might pay them a commission based on the job costing report, and I don't want it on there. That's a user preference. Back to menu, third-party invoicing. We call it third-party billing just because that's the most common term. Bill to customer. You have the ability to send all or part of this bill to someone else, like it may go to the manufacturer. You might send part of this invoice to Trane or to Daikin or to an extended warranty company. You might send the entire invoice to their parents. Maybe you went to a kid's house, an adult kid, and the parents are paying for it. Or it might be their lake home and they want the invoice to go to their main home. You have that option. When you open up an estimate or an invoice to edit it, obviously the prices aren't going to change. This mainly applies to an estimate. But let's say you open up an estimate that's 2 or 3 months old and you no longer want to offer that price, you want it to reflect your current pricing, then you can click the refresh price. And what that will do is that will refresh all of the pricing on the item grid. Now, I'm in an invoice, and it would be unusual to do that here, but it's really helpful in an estimate. If you're into accounting and you want to examine the impact of this transaction on the general ledger, then this form will help you with that. It'll show you the accounts that were impacted, the credit and debit values, etc. Very handy. This is on all of the lists. You can right click, find in GJ, but it's under the menu as well. Form preferences. A lot of people aren't using this feature, I've noticed. When you're in a form like a bill or an invoice, the form has some preferences. You might want to get rid of certain fields or columns that you just don't use. And that allows you to do that, and that's per user. Let's go to menu. I'll show you something that a lot of people don't use. Notice I've changed it and I have to approve it now. The print and the email are gone. So I'm going to hit approve. Please save it. Okay, save it. Menu, approve. I approve my own work. You sure? Yep. We just want them to think about it, like proofreading. Back to menu, print setup. Now, some people will tell us they don't like the word estimate. They don't like the word invoice. They want to change that. There is a custom report title right here. So in addition to having you create your own custom style, there is a custom report title. Click edit. It will give you the name of the form. Use invoice title. There happens to be none. And I can call this something else, like pre-sale auth. Now I can get a signature on a pre-sale authorization, or I can call it acknowledgement, or I can call it whatever, packing slip, you name it. So if you don't like our term, you can change that term and use it for now on. I don't really like estimate, so I changed mine to proposal. All right, so a lot of people aren't aware of that. Convert zeros to blank lines. Rather than show a zero on the invoice, we have the option of just showing you nothing, blank space. So that way, if you have an item with a zero on it, we will just suppress that zero. So it's not going to have a $sign 0.00. We turn them into blanks. Now we have another option here. Don't print the item if it has a zero amount. So don't print the whole thing. Just leave the whole thing off. This says leave it on there, but just convert the zeros to blanks. Hopefully everyone's using the custom styles as needed. I won't go into that here too much. All right, that pretty well covers a few of the things about an invoice I wanted to talk about. I did mention marketing earlier. In case you weren't aware of it, it occurred to me that some people might not be using it. Here's where you find the marketing list. And this is where you enter your marketing endeavors, like direct mail, for example, or Google. Open it here. If you're using a special phone number for that marketing, like you're leasing a phone number, there it is. The what best describes this. This is so that the software can have a better understanding of what you meant. That's going to be important for the dashboard. You have the ability to put in a quick name, make it a parent-child relationship, give it a description, go to history. Of course, everything's got history. You'll be able to see your sales closure rate, cost per lead, cost per sale, etc. Every sale, every work order, all pay AP activity, sales opportunities that had this marketing type as the lead generator. And you get some really good analysis, not to mention reports. If we go to customer sales opportunity manager, this is your entire salesforce.com lightweight edition feature set. And that's what we patterned it after. We patterned it after Salesforce, very, very simplified because we knew what we needed for the industry. But this gives you the ability to set up this whole process. We'll open up our sales lead list. We can see our leads. And we will be building a marketing sales dashboard too, by the way, but you can open up one of these leads and there's a lot of good information. So be sure to use this feature set. This data will be very helpful. Now, some of these lists here, you might say, we don't care about those, but the more of these lists that you use, the better data you'll eventually get out of the software. Like, for example, financing activity. Our dashboard breaks down this information and gives you a lot of terrific information. So if you see a list that you're not using, you might want to look at that list carefully and start using it, because we use that information in the software and we will be using more and more of it in the future. Same with this information here. What stage are you in? What's the status? What is the estimate number? What's the amount of the estimate? Days in the sales cycle. We're using a lot of this info. So please be sure to look into that. Now, another thing that people aren't using is the marketing list generator. This particular form is like a super search feature. We saw search here, the binocular thingy, as some of us call it. Well, here's the marketing list generator. It gives you the ability to pick all these different fields: year-to-date sales, number of employees, sales opportunity, yes or no, email, condition, equal to, not equal to, greater than, put in a value, keep going, use an and/or operator, come down here to item activity. Did they buy this? Did they buy that? So give me a list of all non-commercial that have never bought a precision tune-up within the last year, I could say. Or someone that's never bought a serialized item. You have all this activity. If you're using discounts wisely, you could say, give me a list of people that used a senior citizen discount. You could be sending out a senior citizen ad, a marketing piece for senior citizens. Give me a list of everybody that has used a military discount. And you could send them a card acknowledging Memorial Day, as an example. You can do some very sophisticated searches using this feature. In addition to that, when you run a query, you can then add more criteria and run another query, append the query. So basically, you're running a query, and then you can run a second query on it. And then when you're ready, you can export all of this or open it in Excel and then do a mail merge or an email merge or send it to MailChimp or something to that effect. If you go to form preferences, you can decide what columns you want, including user-defined fields. It'll give you 50 of them, or no, 100. 100. We figured no one would ever need more than 100. Apply. When you do that, it's going to rerun the query. And then I have all these things like gate code. I got the gate code. I got Tom, yes or no. I have all these things in here, and then I can put those into Excel. Now, if you're going to market to these people, you might want to add a contact log. And this gives you the ability to put in a contact log for marketing, your marketing piece. Put in a subject, topic, subject, notes, copy it to the company's master contact log, give it a date, time, could be tomorrow, next day, because you're not sending it till tomorrow, maybe, or next week. But now you have a contact log, so everybody knows that we sent a marketing piece to them for Memorial Day or Christmas or whatever. Also, if you wanted to take advantage of it, I would prefer that you used Microsoft Word But you do have the ability to go in here and create your own style like you do with an invoice. And I made a AC offer, tune-up offer here. Let's just have a look at it. I'll edit it first. So here's the letter I created. Hello, first name, etc. And then hit preview. And it's going to take a minute because it's going to generate a letter for everybody in my query. I didn't think about that when I hit it. So I got 350 pages here. But then it creates the letter. And you could hit print. You could print this right to a printer, or better yet, I would print it to a PDF in case anything goes wrong. I'd make a PDF out of it. Then I'd send the PDF to a printer. But better yet, I would, if it were me, I would put it into an Excel. That way I can take full advantage of all the things that Microsoft 360 can do. And it's extensive. So that's your marketing list generator. Again, I'm not training on it. I just wanted you to be aware of it. I can save my query before I leave. I can load queries. So it's pretty handy. Let's go back to our invoice list and highlight. Remember, I mentioned that you should right click just to see what's there. In addition to right clicking, you should also check out actions to see if there's anything here that you might like. For example, we have a batch ePay feature. We have a batch update feature. You might want to update the department or in the header, or the department in the line item, or the salesperson in the header, and you can do that. So check out actions just to see. You might want to recalculate one or more invoices. So rather than you open the invoice and dirty it, you pretend like you've edited it and then save and close, you can highlight a bunch of them and hit recalculate. If you go to reports, you might see something here you like. Let's go to preferences before I do this. Let's go to preferences and let's go to company, my preferences. Notice we have a use alternative SMTP emailer. Yes. And then I can type in my various information here and I'll hit close. And now I'm using the internal emailer. I'll go to reports. I'll go to print setup, or better yet, I'll just go to email. And now what you have is the internal emailer. And what is it doing? So it grabbed my email address, put in a subject, it attached the PDF invoice, it put in this information by default. You had the ability to add your own signature. So click add, make your own signature. This works a lot like Outlook. You probably have this in Outlook. You've done that too. So you can make your own signature and pick from a signature. I don't have any. In fact, let me just do it real quick, just so you can see it. So that way I can pick from my signature if I'd prefer to use that. And you can edit it, delete it. Now down here, you have the ability to save the email to the contact log. And you can include the full text of the email if you would like to. And if you want to have a topic, you should. Then you'd pick the topic here, sales email out, or it could be, AP, sent invoice, etc. And when you hit the send button, it sends this email and it puts in a contact log. And you probably would want to blind copy another email address so you have a record of it, because Dory Young might call and say, I never got it. And it's in her spam folder, but you don't want to go through that with her. So you'd say, oh, let me check my folder because I got a copy. Oh, here it is. I got a copy of it. I'm going to forward it to you. Make sure you got it. Check your spam, that kind of thing. Now, if you want to add attachments, you can click add and add other attachments if you want to. And you can do more than one. Of course, we could have picked multiple invoices and sent more than one invoice. That's the internal emailer. Another thing that is related, let's go to customer list, open up a customer. In your customers, you might have noticed that you have a, a bum here. Okay. Auto contact method, email, text, don't contact. If you were to pick email or text to the cell phone, what you're doing is you're telling the software what method this person prefers to be contacted. There is an automatic emailer and an automatic texting system in mobile. So you have the ability to send a reminder the day before that could say, "Hello, Arnold. This is Aptora. We're going to be seeing you tomorrow to work on your furnace at 2 o'clock. Please call Bob at the following number," that kind of thing, if you want to reschedule. And they have the ability to respond to that text message. They could hit cancel or whatever, and hopefully they won't cancel it. But if they do reply to the email, of course, you'll get the email in your regular email system. If they reply to the text, you'll get that reply in the Aptora chat app. So when the chat app is running, it will receive that. And if they reply, it also has the ability to change the confirmation status. So they can confirm, they can ask to be rescheduled. By the way, if it got sent, you'll know it because it's marked as sent. If they confirm, it'll change this to confirmed. If they request that you call them back to reschedule, it'll be checked. Canceled, it'll be checked. You can filter out the work order list by the confirmation status, and you can get on the phone and call people if you have to. You can also respond to their text messages in the chat system if you'd prefer. So wanted you to be aware of that. Also, as long as we're in here, be sure to use the quick edit feature. That opens up the details of the work order here. So you'll be able to see the notes, the details. You'll be able to change these things if you'd like. You also can have multiple edit windows up at any given time. You might remember that these things are dockable. So you have the ability to move these things around if you prefer. All right, so you have that option. These dockable. In fact, I can move this over to a whole new window. You can't see it, but I took it off the screen. It's now on another monitor. And I'll leave it there. And now I've got all this space for editing if I want to. And then the list, bring it over, pop it in there. And now I've really messed it up. And I wish I hadn't done any of this. And I can't make heads or tails out of it. Well, you've got a button here to save you. Reset the layout right here. Click that. If you're not aware of it, we have a scheduling wizard. And this allows you to go through a wizard, which creates a work order for you. And it uses GPS data to find the best person and give you an estimated time of arrival, etc. So be sure to check out the scheduling wizard if you haven't done so. That is a neat feature. All right, I'll close that. Budgeting. Want to be sure that you are aware of the budget. We are towards the end of the year. You might be thinking about your 2021 budget. I know I am. Here you have the ability to edit a budget. You can edit the properties of the budget. You can create a new budget. You can create budgets for the whole company, budgets for a specific year, budgets by department. You have the ability to export your budget. So when you create one, here it is, you can export this budget into Excel. You can modify the budget and bring it in from Excel. That's been a feature request. We put that in a while back. So again, you can export to Excel, modify it, bring it back in from Excel. There's a great help topic on it. You hear that all the time, don't you? Great help topic. There's a great help topic, though, on how it works. One of the things that I really like about it is that you don't have to worry about blank lines. When you export to Excel, you can have subtotals and things like that. So you could have an Excel spreadsheet that looks very much like an income statement. You can subtotal the income, subtotal COGS, have gross profit, subtotal net profit. It will ignore any line that doesn't have an account number on it. So if it doesn't see an account number anywhere in that line, it ignores it. That way you can have a nicely formatted Excel spreadsheet. And when you go to do the import, it pays no attention to anything that it shouldn't. It only looks at the account numbers and the values and the months, etc. If you're interested in using that feature, please be sure to check out the help topic, and it'll show you how this works, how you can modify these things. It's really working a lot better. It's received the budget features received quite a bit of attention lately. A lot of it is feature requests, fine tuning that I wanted, etc. So check that out, please. Document list. You probably know when you open up a customer and you right click, you've got your documents feature, document links here. Really, it could be anything, files of any kind, new document link. You can add a document, you can drag something, drop it, drag and drop. You can hit the scan button, scan something, give it a topic, closed it too quick. You can give it a category rather, put in search terms. But did you also know that when you're doing things like entering bills or entering your item receipts, your packing slips, your POs, you also have the ability to scan it. You would just hit create new document link and you'd be able to scan the bill or whatever record it was, and it would associate itself not only with the vendor, but with this bill. Not only the vendor, but the bill. You would be able to go into the bill and see a scanned copy of the bill, but all of the bills would be inside the vendor. Something that we added recently was the packing slip number. As you know, best practice is when you go to receive an item, you're entering a packing slip here, you should enter the packing slip number. We left the reference number here in case there is one, but this is the packing slip number. This might be a reference number of some kind. And we did get the tab ordering correct. We were careful about that. Tab order is correct. Now, when you go to convert the item receipt to a bill, it keeps the packing slip number. Many people complained that they had to convert, or pardon me, they had to backspace over the packing slip number to type in the reference number. They wanted both. So we added that. That came up at Aptora University many different times. So I hope you like that. Something else that came up in the feature request system and was also brought up at Aptora University was entering a purchase order. There were no vendor terms. So in other words, you couldn't change the terms of the vendor in the PO. Now, we went all these years never needing such a thing, but somebody pointed that out and we said, well, okay. So now when you convert a PO to an item receipt or a bill, it will use those vendor terms in case they're different. Maybe you have different terms for this particular PO than normal. That allows you to change those terms, and those terms will get carried through. If you have an item receipt or a bill that has multiple POs, it'll try to figure it out. It'll try to use the right term, but keep in mind, you could have 5 POs, 5 different terms, and you create a single item receipt. It's going to have a hard time figuring that out. I think it uses the very first one you picked if you picked one and then others, but you might have to change it at that point. So that was a feature request. Speaking of feature requests, let's go to PO list. Let's open an existing PO, hit menu, and we'll go down to print setup. Did you know you had the ability to attach, when you go to email this, you can attach a PDF to the PO. You can also attach a tab delimited file to the email. Why would you do such a thing? That tab delimited file follows a specific format that many vendors can use to import your PO automatically through their mail system. So in other words, when they receive a PO from you without a person even seeing it, that email can get processed and a PO could get entered. If you have a vendor that can take advantage of that, then you might look into using that feature. There's a help topic on the layout. I forgot the name of the layout, but it's a standard layout. And hopefully your vendor can take advantage of it. So that attaches a tab delimited file to the email. Now, another thing that you can do that's pretty new is create your own PO. Click Add New. Custom Styles is fairly new. This was a feature request. A lot of people have asked for it. We said no for a long time, but we put in the feature request system. People voted for it. Now, just like invoices, custom data views, etc., you have all these fields to pick from. You can make your own PO and then save it. And you can have as many of those as you want. You could save one of them as a default. By the way, I forgot to mention the document links that we talked about earlier. Those can also be links to a website. There's no reason why it has to be a file. It could be a website. And I've noticed people aren't aware of that. So when you go to do a document link, new document link, just remember you can paste in a link to a web page. It doesn't have to be a link to a file. And then that way, when you double click on it, it'll take you to that web page. I'm going to go back up to Window, close all. Nope, don't want to save. You probably know this already because I always talk about it, but please don't forget custom data views. We are adding to these all the time. We've added several recently. If it's grayed out, I don't have permission for it. So notice how it says dash budget year to date, no department. So we have a new budget year to date, no department. Custom data view, I don't have permission for it. That just means I got to go give myself permission. Thankfully, I know the right guy to talk to. But you can see like customer revenue for 7 years. You can see employee efficiency, employee stats, GPS data. All your GPS data is saved in here. All of your custom form builder data is in here. All that custom form data, when you use our custom form builder and you put in all that data, it's all in there. It's all in the database and you can get it out and do things with it. So you can populate this list. For example, here's the columns. Just check that out. So you can see what these are giving you. You can right click, put it in Excel and do things with it. You can go up to reports, setup, see if you have one. I don't. And there's a template for it. So this is the over under. And you look at this and say, what is that? Best thing to do is to study the columns and you'll get an idea of what it does. Revenue to date, revised contract price, etc. Hit preview if you want to. And that way you can see it. So we have the original, let me zoom it for you. So we have original contract price, revised price, the estimate cost, cost to date, cost to complete, percent to complete. So how much is left? How much has been billed to date? revenue earned to date. So are we over or under and how much? What's the estimated gross profit, percent of gross profit? You may say, you know what, this is not bad, but this isn't good enough. And you can change it. You don't like it, change it. That's what's cool about it is it gives you a good start. Now, each one of these data views is a chunk of data. It's really a what we call in programming a view, a database view, or a database stored procedure. But really, just think of it as a chunk of data. So you got a chunk of data related to marketing. You got a chunk of data related to open work orders, mobile payments, payroll register, commissions, state unemployment wage summary. Um, Pick that. So there's all the data that you would probably need to do a state unemployment wage summary, a SUTA. Go to reports, go to setup, add new. If there's a template, it'll show up like this. You can clear it out if you don't like it. Hit preview, and there's a good start. And we have a lot more coming, by the way. We're adding more, and we're also rebuilding the custom data viewer. It's going to take us into next year to get it done. Middle, late part of next year, maybe that long, but we're completely rebuilding the reporting system, the custom data viewer. It's all getting a giant facelift. Cash flow, I love that one. I've got a great spreadsheet that flows into that does some really great analysis. So yeah, anyway, custom data view, that could become your best friend. A lot of people don't take advantage of our importing and exporting. You have the ability to import a lot of things. Let's just open this up real quick. And let me see if I can find just anything to fool it. All right. I had to pick a file. So here we have the ability to import adjusting journal entries. Did you know that you can import bills and credits from your vendor? So your vendor, rather than send you 100 paper invoices, they could send you a file and you could import them. You can import the budget and chart of accounts, and you can import your item adjustments. So the end of the year is coming, right? How would you like to just use Excel, fill out an Excel spreadsheet, and import the whole thing and adjust your items? You can do that. Now, how do you learn about that? Help topic. There's a great help topic on it. The help topic is pretty darn thorough. I'm going to have it search for that. I'll find it here in a second. Import. Take me a minute to find it because we actually have multiple import help topics. But these are all the things that you can import. You can import payroll from a payroll service, your tax codes, unit of measures. And the common question though is, well, what does all this mean? What is it doing? Well, maybe the easiest thing to do is to just select something like budget and go to the next screen. And it gives you the opportunity to pick what worksheet, and then you can see the fields. So it looks at the file field. These are the fields that it found in that Excel spreadsheet. And then it gives you the opportunity, like here's something called account. It found something called account in the file. Inside Total Office Manager, you need to map it to something, account number. You cannot map the same field twice. So it's telling me that I've already got that somewhere. So I'd look, account number. Okay. Well, so the sample data says sales discount. So that's giving me the account description. Well, I don't care. I don't want it. So I'll leave that alone. Now let's grab that help topic. Importing bills, vendors, credits, item receipts. Let's have a look at that. Importing data into Total Ops Manager. Let's click on that. So here is an article on importing data. Gives you general information. And then really where it's helpful is down here. appointment types, chart of accounts, customer types. It tells you the various fields that are available to import, like a customer. Here's the fields. It tells you, is the field required? What's the maximum length? What's the field type? Now, that's technical. A string may not mean anything to the average user, but to a programmer or a computer person, they know what a string is. There's a specific definition for what a string is. You could just type in define data type string in Google, and you'll know all about it. But this shows you all the fields, the types, what's required, etc. So it's pretty thorough. I mean, I could just keep scrolling, but everything that we import has been explained pretty well. We gave importing bills its own topic, how to import bills, credits, item receipts. It's got its own topic, but it tells you all the things that are available, what they do, lots of notes. You can see these notes are more thorough than the other one. Want to know why? Because I wrote it. I wrote it. I wrote it myself. Not bragging though. But yeah, I wrote that. So I typed in all these notes because I wanted to make it a no-brainer. All right, so that's how to import bills and item receipts and things like that. And you have a lot of options. We go back here, you can see the various things. All right, and then exporting is, people ask, why can't I export very much? There's not much you can export here. And the reason why we didn't put a lot of energy into it, because everything is exportable. Every time you open up a list and you right click on the list, there's an export feature and there's an open in Excel feature. So we didn't put a lot of energy into it. So if you want to do an export, you're usually better off here doing that export. One more thing I want to say about the reporting under financials. Don't forget you have your budget right there. So you can print your budget, your income statement. You can print it with a budget. So you check the little box, you'd pick the budget. So you have a budget report. You can add a budget to your income statement. You've got a budget custom data view that you can use. Don't forget about your financial ratios and analysis. Here is all of your company's big financial ratios, the ones that really matter. Profit, solvency, every one of them is explained. We show the math. There's a great help topic, as you would probably guess, right? Because I keep saying that. Red's bad. The help topic is good. Labor ratios, Z-score, that's a neat thing. Read about the Z-score, Professor Altman's Z-score. That's your final grade. It's a proven bankruptcy predictor. And we use the optimized Z2 score, which is much better for our industry. Again, read that help topic and you'll see what I mean. But I think you'll like that. It's pretty helpful. A reminder on some of these lists, like let's open up a work order list. Under actions, let me get some work orders on here. Under actions, there is a batch update work orders. We saw this elsewhere, but I wanted you to be aware that it's in various places. So here you have the ability to batch update certain things about your work orders, about your invoices, about your customers. So you open up the customer job list, go to actions, and we don't have a single form. We've been adding multiple forms, but you can batch update the customer type or the markup or the payroll taxes allocated, the tax items, the tax codes, the salesperson, et cetera, et cetera. You have all these batch update opportunities. Something else that you might want to do is you might want to merge duplicates. If you have a duplicate, let's go down here and find somebody. Let's say that this and this are actually duplicates, and maybe even a third one's a duplicate. Always try right-clicking, by the way. Merge contacts. Click that. Now, this allows you to merge those contacts, but this goes well beyond what I've seen in some software. This allows you to pick a target, a single target, and you can merge two or more, not just one, but two or more into that target. And when you're finished, it will either delete the sources or make them inactive. I would make them inactive. And you have the ability to merge the contact information, or you can add additional contacts. That's that contacts tab each customer has. If you're scared and want to study it, you can always hit the print list and look it over. But this merges all of the financial activity, everything. It'll make those others just disappear. And it'll do a great job of dealing with all the data, but especially all the equipment and the work orders and the invoices, adjusting journal entries, you name it. It runs through the whole database and figures it all out for you. Now, in addition to that, you probably have smaller lists that you'll create duplicates with. Like, for example, you might have, I don't know, customer equipment or something like that. And you want to merge those two. We don't have the ability to merge everything in the software, but the easiest way to find out is to go to, say, a, oh, customers. I was doing this the other day, customer equipment. I put in two of the same by accident and used them for a while. So what you can do here is highlight a couple and merge them together. So we have merge ability elsewhere. I think one thing that's used very frequently is in chart of accounts. You have the ability to merge your chart of accounts and it'll handle your financials nicely. And then you can inactivate the empty source when you're finished. So merging is all around the program. Just have to kind of check around just to see where it's available to make sure that you know where they are if you happen to need them on that particular thing. Okay, I guess the one last thing, I'm looking at my notes here. Pardon me for the delay here. I'm looking at my notes and I want to talk about year-end work because we're at the year end. If you go to our help system, there is a good topic on how to prepare for the year end. And let's see if I can open that topic up. Year end. I think it's just year end. We wrote something on month end too, by the way, like every month, the things you should look at. This would be at the end of at the end of the year, doing all your end of the year things. That's slow right now, but trust me, there is a year end topic in there somewhere. I just wanted to make you aware of it, so that way you could come in here, hit year end, and get some ideas about the things you should be looking for towards the end of the year. If this is unrelated to our software, but if you haven't spoken to your accountant, if your accountant hasn't called you and said, hey, it's September, we need to be talking about the end of the year. If you haven't had that conversation, then you might want to think about a new accountant seriously, because you probably have a tax preparer and not an accountant. As you probably know, I'm a partner at an accounting firm. And we reach out to clients in advance because it's too late to do anything. I mean, it's December 2nd right now. It's getting too late to do a lot of things. There's a lot of things that are just too late, like paying you the proper amount and taking distributions or dividends instead of overpaying you, or maybe we're underpaying you and we haven't taken advantage of distributions and we haven't taken advantage of dividends. And there's all kinds of other things that it's too late to have that conversation. So be sure that you have an accountant, not a tax preparer, that gets a hold of you and just insists on a meeting. So here's some procedures for year end, just some ideas on what to go through and check out. All right, Erica, how are we doing?
We're good.
Are there any things that I need to demonstrate in the software based on your Q&A or something maybe I missed?
No, I think we got all of those questions answered. Oh, what
Okay.
was the help topic that you had went to in the beginning, the very first one?
Well, let's open up my browser. Maybe it's still opened. I had release notes. I think that was the very first thing is I went into release notes and explained that we try to do a good job really explaining what's in there and bugs we fixed and the ticket numbers and so forth.
We do have a
One,
question about, oh, sorry,
that's right.
if you want to go over reimbursables and how to see when customers have unused reimbursables.
Yeah, so there's a custom data view for that, but I won't bother with it. I'll just first start by going to contacts and jobs, and then I'll go to jobs because it's related to jobs, reimbursables. And remember, for everybody that doesn't know this, the reimbursables feature keeps track of things that we have been buying, acquiring for a job, and we want the software to remind us to invoice them for those items. Well, this gives us some preferences. We can pick a certain job or a certain customer. We can include the subs, transaction types, etc. Normally, you would never say all. You're typically examining something. You typically have some kind of details here, or parameters here, rather. You can include the details if you want. Include item notes. Sure, let's just do it all. Hit preview. And okay, so that's all I have here. So that means that I only have a couple of items that are reimbursable that need to find their way onto an invoice. Let's see, none, department. Yeah, so in here, well, you know what? I'll do all. I should have more now. Yeah, there we're talking 53 pages. All right, hopefully you won't have 53 pages worth unless you were expecting it. But this gives you a list of all the things that you've acquired for a job, but they have not made it onto an invoice yet. Now, don't forget, this is probably obvious, but don't forget, when we go to an invoice for that job, and you could create a blank invoice just to have a look. So if it was a blank invoice, you can go pick the customer or the job, and you could go to reimbursables just to see if anything's there. But what this is telling me is that for Popeyes, CNA Foods, Popeyes, that store, these are all items that we have been buying for the job that need to get on the invoice. And incidentally, many of these things could be timesheet entries. So I'll point this out real quick and then I'll pause, Erica, to make sure I'm on the right track here. But when you enter a timesheet entry, one thing that you can do is, let's just grab some stuff here, pick a job. I'm just being random here. One thing you can do is pick a service item right there. I'm associating an item that can be on an invoice with labor. And if I check the box that says, hey, this is reimbursable, and my preferences always do that, well, it's going to show up in the reimbursables form as a timesheet entry. Why would I want to do that? Well, I may want to affect the retail price. I may not, but I might want to associate that timesheet entry with this invoice for proper bookkeeping purposes. Did you have anything you wanted to add to that, Erica?
No, I think I'm good on that one.
Okay. All right, let's see here. I was just scanning through those questions. Are there any that I would need to show on the screen or help with?
No?
Man, you're too good. You were seriously awesome to have on here. I mean, It really is great because it's just cool to have answers immediately. It helps that you can type so quickly. Have you thought of any, this is for you, Erica, have you thought of any recent features that I might want to point out that I didn't talk about today that maybe we should just take a few minutes to say here they are? Maybe feature requests that you knew about that I didn't talk about.
Did you do the one on payroll? I had to run away for a minute because our help desk is having an issue.
Oh, the W-2?
Yes.
No. Let me open that up and then you tell everybody what it is. So I'm going to go to my payroll items list, which I went to earlier. I'll open up just a tax item. And there's a new box called Exclude from W-2. What's that?
So that now gives you the ability to suppress some information from W-2s. We have quite a few companies that set up taxes to calculate specifically on earnings for things like fringe benefits, but they're not truly taxes. And the W-2s don't need to hold that information. So this year, so that we don't have to use Erica, you can now just check the box and it will not show up on the W-2.
All right. Yep. Don't have to use Erica. I thought of one thing. It was a minor feature request, but somebody on the feature request system asked if we could add the division, industry, and department to the department list. If I remember right, they were saying that they're getting ready for our dashboards. And they were opening up. If you haven't seen this, any of you out there, there's an advanced button, and it allows you to define what this department is. You know, you have words here, but the software doesn't know what those words mean. So you can say, hey, this is commercial, it's HVAC, it's related to design build. And then that way the dashboard can better make use of that data, and so can other reports. So that's fairly new, that feature there. All right. Well, I think that we have pretty well covered the things that I wanted to cover today. One last chance for questions or comments or requests from anyone. All right. Very good. Well, we recorded this, so after we have a chance to download it, process it, and all that, we'll get it uploaded, and we'll send everybody links so they have access to it if they want to look at it later. We have a fairly new update out. If you haven't updated your software, please do so. I think it's a good, safe update. I think that you probably noticed the updates have been more reliable. They're making the software faster and faster. I can't overstate, though, how important the database maintenance is. I have horror stories that I hate to share with you. We've had many people get hit with ransomware. Erica has had to deal with it. Kevin and others had to deal with it. It's sad. The sales guys are sad. I mean, seriously, it's sad to hear it. People lose data. They have no backups. They got ransomed, hit with ransomware. They, of course, didn't pay the ransom. They don't have backups. They thought they did. And also keep in mind, just because you back up your server doesn't even mean your backups are working. It doesn't even mean that you can restore them. They may be backing up bad backups. I've had that happen to me. I've backed up bad backups, meaning the backup was messed up, but I never knew it. And then somebody said, you know, you should test that. And we did, and it was a bad backup. So please be sure to have somebody knowledgeable set up SQL Server, make sure your database maintenance is running, your backups are running, and then that backs up the database to a file on your server somewhere, and then your server backs that file up. But like I said earlier, if you just have a server backup and you've never done anything to SQL Server, you most likely are not going to have a backup if you needed one. If you're on hosted cloud, we do all that. But when it's on premises, it's self-serve. You're on your own. We have help topics on it, but they were designed for somebody with some knowledge. Not super duper expert necessarily, but some knowledge of the topic. All right. I think that's it. Thank you, everybody, for being on here. As always, I really enjoy it, and I enjoy interacting with you on the feature request system. I know that you don't get everything you ask for, but that's Christmas. That's Santa Claus doesn't do that either, right? But I really enjoy hearing what you want and talking about it and finding out things. And, I'm always looking for that great idea. And everything that was in our feature, everything that was in the release notes for the last several months, every bit of it came from the feature request system. It was somebody asking for something. We don't add things just for the heck of it. And I'm not trying to be funny. I mean, we just don't because we're busy. So we look at that feature request system and, we really want to know your ideas. And those of you who have participated in it, we really appreciate it. Be sure to check us out on YouTube too. Well, on behalf of Erica, I want to say thank you to everybody. Erica, thank you for all the help. I appreciate your 190 word a minute typing skill because that really helps us keep up with the questions.
You're welcome.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Hope you have a great week, good weekend. See y'all later.
Bye.
Bye.